Today we're going to talk about Copernican shift. How many people here are familiar with Copernicus? Okay, well this should be a good educational session. My team likes to call it grad school. So we're going to go through Copernican shift and what we'll call sort of the 3 stages of marketing. And we'll sort of make it fun as we go along, and I'll sort of have some fun with you. If we've got some time at the end, there's a microphone here, and we can do some questions and answer. So let's get into it. Quick bit on my background. I did start in CPG marketing, so I'm a traditionally trained marketer. Did about 12 years of startups, and then was recruited into Microsoft Research. Spent a few years there launching the company's first cloud product, and then was recruited as the CMO for Microsoft US. Did that for 7 years. While I was CMO for Microsoft US, I met this young, brash company named Sprinklr, and I decided to buy their platform to lead our modern channels. I was actually their first customer. The thing I always like saying about Sprinklr, though, is they did a wonderful sales job because I had no idea I was their first customer. Never crossed my mind. The way they talked, I thought I was like their last customer. And of course, once they got Microsoft signed, they went and signed Nike, then they went and signed Dell, and sort of the rest was history. So and I've been at Sprinklr now for a year. I was actually here last year in my sort of first week on the job, and sort of looking forward to going through this today. One quick thing, if you want to get a hold of me or connect with me in any way, I'm available as Grad Conn everywhere. Grad Conn is actually a pretty unique name. In fact, I'm the only Grad Conn in the world. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that cool? Yeah. And sometimes people ask me sort of where my name came from. It's a kind of an interesting sort of story how I decided to call myself Grad Conn. And it wasn't just because the URL was available. So, although that's always a good reason. So the story is I got my name from my parents. I know. They came up with that, right? And the people say, like, how did it come to be? And I said, well, my parents were quite, what's the right word? Robustly belligerent is probably a right way to put it. And they couldn't agree really on much of anything. Brought me home from the hospital without a name. Hadn't agreed my name. And argued about it for about a week. And they finally settled on a compromise. So my name is a compromise. So Grad is actually my mother's maiden name. And then Conn is my father's maiden name. That's a little misogyny check there for everybody. Okay, it takes a while. Okay, it's always like good to gauge the audience, just sort of see where everyone's head's at. Anyway, so you can connect with me on your favorite platform. I'm Grad Conn anywhere. I'm not Grad Conn269 anywhere. I'm just Grad Conn everywhere. There's one exception, though, just to kind of clear the air. I got very complacent, never bothered registering my URL. If you go to gradconn.com, this is not me. Okay, this is not my like semiconductor side hustle. This is actually a totally different company, loved Foxconn, so they named their company Grad Conn. And I just want to say, just for clarity, and just to kind of clear the air a little bit, you'll notice in the top left-hand corner, they make a claim. They say, Grad Conn offer tiny connector solutions. And I just want to say that's an outrageous statement. Fake news, absolutely no problems in that department. So we're going to keep going. All right, so I want to talk a lot about transformation today. And I'm going to talk a lot about kind of how it feels to be transforming and some of the things you need to sort of be aware of. This is a great, summer's coming, sort of a great visual. We often feel like this in our companies. We're on the beach, everything's going great, having a good time, everything seems just fine. And the thing is that you have to always understand the broader context in which you're living. In this case, they're in an hourglass. And that beach is going to feel okay for quite a long time until you start to reach the neck of the hourglass, which is what's happening in a lot of industries right now. This is a great quote from General Eric Shinesky, which is, if you don't like change, you're going to like irrelevance even less. I think it's a great rallying cry. So I'm going to play a video. This is kind of a cool video that I think all of us sort of feel as we're moving into this era of digital transformation. This is a 12-year-old girl, and she's about to do her first 60-meter ski jump. And I don't know about you, but my palms sweat even thinking about this video. And she coaches herself up through the jump. And this is the kind of coaching that we all need to do with ourselves every day as well. So let me play the video. I might comment a few times while it's playing, but just listen to what she says to herself and how she gets herself ready to make it happen.
I'll be fine.
Have fun.
I'll do it. Well, here goes something, I guess. Oh, okay, you can do this. I'm gonna jump.
You got it.
Whoa, my ski's slipping off.
Just remember, never snowplow, okay?
No snow plows.
Just keep it straight and you'll be fine.
Okay.
Take it on the 20.
Straight. Do you go faster on the in run?
Little bit.
A little bit?
Little bit?
Is it any steeper, do you think? Not much?
Same steepness, it's just longer.
Well, just longer. Just longer. Just a bigger 20, that's all.
Yep.
See that?
That's
Bigger
on.
20.
Bigger
No big
20.
deal.
Go ahead. You got this. I got it.
It's fine. You'll be fine.
Okay. Here
The longer you wait, you'll be more scared.
I go. Just the suspense at the top at the first time freaks you out. That's the only thing. It's so fun. Huh? 60 seems like nothing now. Whoa!
Let's go. Isn't that great? Love that video. You know, I think if you can coach yourself up at any age, and I think too many of us sometimes get worried when we get to the 60, even though we've been doing 20s all our lives. And you know, once you do the 60 once, it's like, nothing, I can do the next one as well. So I love that way as just sort of framework to think about how we need to sort of advance and continue sort of changing as the world keeps changing. So talking about changing worlds, I want to talk about Copernicus. So Copernicus was a very famous scientist. He was also a member of the Catholic Church, and he was an astronomer. And if you kind of think back to the 1400s, Catholic Church had a pretty strong hold on society. Part of what they were trying to do is they were trying to understand how the universe worked. And they had this view of the universe called a Ptolemaic view of the universe. And the Ptolemaic view of the universe is that there was a flat Earth in the center, and the sun and the moon went around the Earth. And it's not crazy in the context of the times. So if you've ever stood in a field for a couple of days, I recommend it. When, in the morning, the sun comes up over here, goes overhead, then sets. And the next day, the sun comes up over here, goes overhead, and sets. And things look pretty flat. It's not a bad observational view of the universe. And the problem with this view of the universe is that it was very hard to predict the seasons and the solstices. You couldn't explain the retrograde motion of Mars. There was just a whole bunch of things that didn't sort of work. And so Copernicus was assigned to add additional complicated calculations to what they were doing at the time to try to predict Easter better, for example. One day, as he was thinking about how to make the calculations work, he came up with this idea, which is, what if this Earth is going around the sun? And when you redo the calculations that way, everything falls into place. It works perfectly. And of course, this is what most people believe happens today. It is funny how things change. Now, what did Copernicus do, right? The shift that he made from Ptolemaic to Copernican, which we'll call the Copernican shift, did he invent anything? Did he even really discover anything? This would be a part potentially some of you participate. No, thank you. Way in the back, one brave soul. No, he didn't really. What did he do? He mapped perception our perception of the world is that it is flat and the sun is going around us, to the reality, which is we're going around the sun, which creates the same effect. That unlocked the scientific revolution, and the reason we're standing here today and talking and doing the things we're doing are because of that, mapping perception to reality. The same thing is happening today in the customer universe. Traditionally, we've always looked at customers as circulating around our products. And the way the world's changing is that we need to circle around the customers, and our functions need to circle around the customers. It's a very different way of thinking, and it's only really become a big deal because the customers now have the power of the network to put us out of business or to create a new business out of nothing. Kylie Jenner is an example. I want to play this sort of, this is a fun video. You've probably seen this before, but I love this one. And it just goes to show kind of the challenge humans have of moving sort of from one stage to the next. As they're talking, Katie Couric, who's on the left, look at her fists. See, she's got her hands are balled up in fists of frustration as they're having this discussion. And this is from 1994. 1994.
Back now at 56 past, I wasn't prepared to translate that as I was doing that little tease.
Oh, that's
that little
right.
mark with the A and then the ring around it.
At.
See, that's what I said. Mm-hmm. Katie said she thought it was about.
Yeah. Oh.
But I'd never heard
Or
it.
around
I'd never
or
heard it
about.
said. I'd always
That's
seen
right.
the mark, but never heard
Yeah.
it said. And then it sounded stupid when I said it. Violence at NBC.
I
I heard
be
something
around
big
or
fight
about.
up in the lunchroom the other
See,
week.
there it is. Violence at NBC. GE.com. I mean,
Well, Allison should know.
what
do you
is
say to that,
internet
Allison?
anyway?
What is this craziness?
Internet is that
Massive computer
right,
network.
the one that's becoming really big now.
What do you mean? That's big. How does one? What do you write to it like mail?
No, a lot of people use it and communicate. I guess they can communicate with NBC writers and producers. Allison, can you explain what internet is?
Let's go to the intern. Get the intern to tell us. Isn't that great? But it does represent this sort of human issue with skeuomorphs. Like we always tend to define things by the thing that came before. It's very hard for humans to predict the future. It's very hard for humans to think about the next thing. The very first cars, what were they called? Horseless carriages, right? That's the thing that sort of preceded them. The keyboards that most of you are using, is there any Dvorak users in here? Okay, so you're all using QWERTY keyboards. Where did the QWERTY keyboard come from? In a mechanical typewriter, there are mechanical hitting arms. If the letters are too close together, the arms stick. So with the keyboard of a typewriter, a mechanical typewriter, is they put the most popular characters as far apart from each other as possible. So the QWERTY keyboard is de-optimized to the maximum extent possible for the human in order to overcome the limitations of the mechanical machine. Now, I don't know what kind of laptop you're using, but the one I have doesn't actually have any mechanical striking arms in it anymore. But I'm still using a keyboard invented for a mechanical device. And this inability of humans to sort of drag ourselves forward is the thing that sort of always gets in the way. And so let me talk a little bit about sort of what's happening right now in the industrial revolutions that we're going through. So we're in the beginning of the fourth industrial revolution. The first was obviously mechanical. The second was the beginning of assembly lines and electricity. The third was semiconductors and computers. And now we're in the age of biotech, Internet of Things, and natural user interfaces. What do you notice about these industrial revolutions? What do you see when you look at this chart? What trend do you see? Getting closer together. Thank you. Smart audience. Thank you. That's very good. That's the fastest I've ever had anyone say that. I once spent 10 minutes waiting for people to get it. So we can keep moving. Yeah, they're getting closer together. Faster and faster and faster. In fact, if you take all of human history, and if you were to take human history and represent it on a timeline of, say, 50 years, okay, the last 50 years will be the last 5 minutes of the year, of the 50 years. That's how fast things are beginning to move. But when we talk about industrial revolutions, we often don't talk about the marketing revolutions that are associated with it. And there are actually very consistent marketing revolutions going on at the same time. So there was, direct selling was how the first industrial revolution went. Then we went to mass direct, newspapers, magazines. Then we had broadcast, great revolution. And then we had conversations, which is where we are today. And this shift from broadcast to conversation is a key part of what's going on and why marketing is sort of less effective and more effective and interesting in different ways. A couple other things, even the brand has changed. It's gone from people to products to companies to experiences, which is what we're selling today. The media has changed. This is not particularly compelling. These are pretty obvious, but I've always wanted to put the word shoe leather on a slide, so there we go. And then the sellers have changed, from traveling salespeople to copywriters to the Mad Men era to sort of everyone today. Everyone in the company is in the front office. Everyone in the company is responsible for interacting with customers. So how do we capitalize on this shift? And so I want to introduce this concept of the sort of 3 stages of marketing, and it'll lead to sort of a set of examples of how this shift from broadcast to conversation is changing the way that we need to act and behave and sort of perform as marketers. So the sort of construction I'll sort of land is listen, learn, and love. You hear me talk about this a few more times. We need to do a better job of listening to customers. We need to do a much better job of learning from that listening. And we need to figure out how to love customers and help them love us in return. Listen, learn, and love. I love that Xbox picture. He is super into his Xbox. It's almost a little uncomfortable. All right, so what does listen mean? So half the planet's connected now. There's 4.2 billion people online. Incredible. 3.4 billion of them are social users. 3 billion are smartphone owners. There are 60 billion messages on the messaging platforms being sent every day, of which 9 billion are being directed to companies. It's an extraordinary volume of communication, literally hundreds of billions of messages being spewed out across the planet. What's happened is as people have sort of gone online, their messaging and their communication preferences have changed. This is from Kleiner Perkins, and this is the preferred business contact channels. And you can see what's happened is you've got a movement from the phone in the sort of silent generation all the way to social and chat, preferred channels for Generation Y. And Generation Y, they're in their 30s now. They're in their peak buying and spending years. So how do you pull all that in? There's listening across the social channels. There's millions of web sources like blogs. You've got to manage all the apps and all the information coming in from them, and the messaging platforms and chat. That's all got to get pulled in somehow. That has to be captured and then converted into structured data. Because the challenge with all this data is that it's highly unstructured. And even in a single post, it's sometimes hard to tell if someone's happy or sad. I had a terrible flight, great reception at the hotel. What's the sentiment there, right? Once you've got that unstructured data converted, you want to connect it to the operational data in your company so that you've got the experience data coming from your listening connected to the operational data that you've already got existing in your CRM systems. That drives a 360-degree customer view, and then that 360-degree customer view is something that everyone in the company can collaborate around. So let's talk about that for a second. Because one of the challenges in most companies is that they talk about front office, they talk about the customer, but nobody has a single view. Have you ever had that experience when, as a customer, you make a call, and then they make you repeat everything you just said? Everyone hates that, right? And that's the challenge in front office, is that no one can see the view that everyone else looks at. And so being able to have one view across the whole company with a common customer ID, there's some really great work starting to go on. The ODI initiative, the Open Data Initiative from SAP, Adobe, and Microsoft, I think is going to be very promising. So once departments can sort of organize around it, they need to collaborate, and they need security, privacy, and governance to be able to do that well. And then that means that they need to generate tons of content. And the content generation is a process that's highly iterative. We have one client that did 8 million different ad units in 90 days. Our average client does about 20 to 40,000 ad units in a campaign. That's something that requires AI, requires a lot of automation, requires a lot of machine learning. And then from there, you can actually love your customers. You love them with modern conversations, real-time marketing, personalized advertising, actionable research, and proactive care. And these are the basic 5 functions of any front office, the basic 5 functions of what you do to make a happy customer. So that's listen, learn, and love, kind of end-to-end system. It's actually kind of neat. And one of the things I would observe is that most people have separated their listening system from their learning system from their love systems. And even the love systems themselves are all separated. And those separations make it really hard to have a cohesive approach to what you're trying to do with the person. So let's look at some examples and just sort of, we call them handshakes. I'll use some examples from Microsoft and then from Sprinklr itself. So here's a set of examples from Microsoft. These are little ad units that Microsoft makes. They make hundreds of thousands a year. And if you take a look at them, they've got the handle right in the ad. And the pictures are pictures from that person's feed. So these would be pictures that people would have of them or of their cat or of their dinosaur or whatever else they've got there. These are highly personalized ads. People, when they see these ads, they're blown away. The retweet rate on these is 98.5%. One person said, oh my God, Microsoft made an ad just for me today, and this is the best day of my life, which is like really, really cool. And also a tiny bit sad, as well. But mostly cool, right? And so this idea of being able to really connect with people on a very personal level, that's really what it means to be loving your customer. Here's another example of just kind of connecting with the zeitgeist. So this is just a post from E3, the big game conference. Dave Hinkle, not associated with Microsoft, just sort of said, hey, this seems like a tale of Juliet and Romeo, okay? Kind of PlayStation and Xbox standing side by side. They're not even touching, right? What Microsoft did, which I thought was really cool, is they said, hey, maybe they are touching. And hey, Dave, if these two can make it work, there's hope for us all. And so Dave retweeted that, and it reached 9.5 million people, favorited thousands of times, lots and lots of comments, a ton of engagement. And we talk about organic not being an effective channel anymore, but if you use this kind of highly personalized creative, what happens is the retweets, especially if they're done to influencers, start to generate organic reach that you can't normally get. And then it got picked up by the press. So GameZone said, Microsoft approves of interconsole relationship, which is just dirty enough to be interesting without being scandalous, right? So then that's kind of B2C, right? Sprinklr obviously is a B2B company. We have 1,000 very large customers, mostly from the Fortune 1000. And what we do is we have a process called social ABM, social account-based marketing, where we actually have the people that we want to talk to are in our Sprinklr interface, and when they make a comment or we see something about them, we talk to them. So Joy Howard, CMO of Sonos, got a new job at Lyft, leaving Sonos. Sonos is a great customer of ours. Lyft, not quite yet a customer. And she just posted this. And so we said, hey, Joy, congratulations. And we took her picture, which, by the way, people love their own picture online, stuck her in a pink Lyft car, and just said, hey, thanks. She commented on it, basically, hey, looking forward to working with you at my next place. And then a whole bunch of people liked it and favorited it, which basically gave us a whole new set of people that were in her influencer group and on her buying committee. And this is an example of highly personalized B2B communications that totally change the relationship between prospects and companies. Instead of saying, download my white paper, we basically try to create a personal relationship and a handshake. And it's amazingly powerful. Very few people are doing it too, which makes it amazingly powerful. Same thing, this is the CMO of MasterCard, won an award, using some elements from one of his campaigns. We put this post out. He quote retweeted it. Also, a ton of his team kind of came onto it as well. And this has actually turned into a customer. This is someone who wouldn't return our emails, in fact, had not opened them. So we could see in the in the customer ID, the integrated customer ID, we could see all the actions we'd had. He'd not even opened the emails we'd sent to him. He posted something, he put this post up basically about an event he'd been to, and this new cup that was strawless. I thought, okay, and we'll do something fun. So we created a little GIF and put his goals on the cup. He loved it, retweeted it, and then said to us, all the emails we'd been sending to him were from an inside salesperson named Jake. And so then he replied to us and he said, okay, I'll call Jake. And it turned into a piece of business, okay? Last example, this is a Burger King example. Burger King is a really great profile for us because part of what Sprinklr does, among the many things it does on the platform, is it can have insights by location. So location insights allow you to sort of have an experience score for each of your, say, restaurants. So McDonald's is a big customer. They use this for their 14,000 locations. All the banks use it for their locations. Retail, we have a ton of retail customers using it as well. Burger King was not yet a customer at the time. So we started following their CMO, Fernando Mercado. And we tried to engage, and nothing had really happened. Then Fernando put this post up. I'm introducing a new product today, which I love the name, which is crispy chicken pretzel fries. I can always tell the audience, like when I say that in Europe, people go bananas, like in horror. But they don't have ranch dressing, so we got one on them. Yeah, someone in Britain said, we don't have ranch dressing here, and I said, well, how do you eat food? It's just like kind of confused now. Anyway, so we put this up, and so 2 of our experience managers zipped out to Herald Square, where we're located, and they bought the first crispy pretzel chicken fries in that Herald Square location, came back, and this is actually a boomerang, doesn't play in PowerPoint, and said, hey, loving these. Fernando responded 1 minute later, want some. Then he posted something about how the king goes to the horse races, and we said, hey, the only king we're thinking about, the only Triple Crown we're thinking about are burgers with crowns on them. He read that within a minute, liked it, retweeted that as well. And this went on and on and on. It became quite playful as he put things out and we were sort of putting things in. And we were entering contests, and it was this back and forth relationship. Not once did we ever say, buy Sprinklr. Not once did we ever say, download our white paper or visit our website or anything. We literally just having fun. And then one of the experience managers, bottom left, Sammy there with the glasses, Sammy came down with a case of acute appendicitis and had to go to the hospital for an emergency appendectomy. And I'm legally required to say that is not because of crispy pretzel chicken fries. Just got to get that out there. Nothing to do with it. So anyway, so she's back at home recovering and working from home, and or the couch, I think. And her mom comes up to her and she goes, hey, Sammy, did you order something from Burger King? And she's like, no. And she goes, well, there's a box from Burger King at your door. And Fernando sent her, because she had a previous post saying she had appendicitis and was recovering at home. So Fernando sends her crispy pretzel chicken fries swag. Beach towels, things for her glasses, flip-flops, and all that kind of stuff. Isn't that something? At this point, we still have not talked about anything to do with business. We're literally forming relationships online, and we do this hundreds of times a week. And signed Burger King as $1 million client in December, right? But not just because of this, but boy, I tell you, sure made a big difference. Because when you walk into that room, people know who you are, they know what you're all about, the kind of people you are, totally changes the relationship, because people are essentially making emotional decisions when they make buying decisions. And I think that in B2B, one thing I think people forget is that B2B is actually one of the simpler categories, because you're really selling against one emotion, and you're really trying to protect against one negative emotion. What's the one emotion you're selling against? What's one thing that people are buying when they buy in B2B? Doesn't matter, like, could be tractors. That's right, good guesses. They're buying career success. They're not buying your features, they're not buying your speeds and feeds, they're buying career success. What are my chances of being successful in my career with this product? And then they're also making just a little quick calculation. What are the chances of me being fired if I buy this product? And obviously, the fired line needs to be much shorter than the success line. All right, so let me just kind of sort of talk a little bit about, sort of kind of close with this, then we'll have a few minutes for questions. So if you've got some thoughts, feel free to come up to the mic here. Just want to kind of close with this idea of digital transformation and sort of making the switch from broadcast to conversational, because the examples I just took you through were all obviously very conversational, and they weren't programmatic display ads posted in the social channels. They're really leveraging social. They're really leveraging the channel in a way that is what the channel's meant to be. So I talked a little bit about how many people are online. What's also happened is it's created a different kind of customer. And so this sort of new customer, this modern customer, is somebody who trusts the opinion of others more than the opinions of a brand. They're someone who is, wants it right now. They want it on the channels that they want it to be on. They want you to sort of find them and solve their problems. It's not someone who's willing to sit on a phone for half an hour while your customer service finds their record. And that's what's created this Copernican shift that we were talking about earlier. It is a fundamental shift in the way that consumers sort of power the revenue line of the enterprise. At one point, we could rely on customers to just do what we gave them and just take it, and that was all they had to do. Now there are alternatives, or there are other ways of doing it, and there's competitors who are going to leverage that. And so as this sort of Copernican shift occurs, what we need to do is then look at that existential threat and drive a digital transformation initiative around it. And these digital transformation initiatives are stuff that we have going all the time as marketers now. And so if you think about sort of the 5 sort of categories of digital transformation, they're all in the front office. And your marketing, advertising, research, customer care, and social enablement all have to be part of that transformation. And so the way that we build Sprinklr, this is kind of the one time we'll sort of mention Sprinklr from a structural standpoint, is that it's a single platform where all those functions are connected in one single code base. Because we think the only way to really do this correctly is to have a single common customer ID and a single way of communicating to customers with the knowledge of everything that customer has done with you. And then that sort of leads to the digital transformed company. So I'm just going to end with a quick video, and we'll have a few minutes for questions. This is another kind of good example of transformation. Of course, it's NHL hockey season, and as some of the more perceptive among you may tell, I have a bit of Canadian left in me. And although I am an American now, but there's still a bit of accent in there about. And what I'll do is to just sort of play this. This is, I think, a great example of how to change the way the game is played. It's perfectly legal, by the way. See that in replay. Looks like just a normal picking up the puck. No big deal. He's skating around. Oh, whoa. Wait a second. I don't even think he cares if he hits the goalie or hits the net. He's just spearing it. I love the look on his face. He's kind of going, he's like, yeah, I did that. Isn't that great? Man, I love that. Anyway, that's my presentation. Thanks for the time and attention. Are there any questions? We've got about 5 minutes. I can just make stuff up if you want. What's that? Oh, perfect.
What do you think about influencers? And
what do I think about
influencers and using them for marketing and the shift and everything?
So don't go away. Stay there for a second. So tell me what you think of influencers for a second. So it's because when you why are you asking the question and kind of where are you trying to go?
So I work for a brand. I do think influencers are really great. I work with a brand that sells to really big companies like Walmart and Amazon. So these companies want to work with really huge influencers. And I'm like, meh, they come with a lot of problems. I want to do like a really micro-influencer kind of campaign. And they're like, well, what can that do? So it's more like trying to convince people that celebrities often buy followers and have a lot of trouble sometimes, and it's much better to use smaller influencers to try to make your brand more human and personable, I think.
Okay, great. That's a great perspective. Okay, and I think I agree almost completely with that. But let me, you can sit down now. Okay. Yeah, well, if you want to. I'm not forcing you to sit down either. I do think, remember we talked about skew morphs a little bit earlier, right? So part of the problem is that the broadcast mentality has still infected most marketers. Most marketers still think it's okay to send 1 million emails to get 10,000 opens, 1,000 clicks, and 100 actions. Somehow we think that's okay. Why not just talk to the 100 people, right? And the broadcast mentality is let's find that big famous person and blast it out to 1 million followers. That's sort of the mentality of it. And that broadcast mentality is a real challenge because you don't really build real groundswell. And I think you're going to pay a lot of money for those influencers. I'd also judge, and I might be wrong, but I would judge that that type of influencer people are becoming skeptical of. I mean, the whole Fire Festival thing and things. I think that there's just a general sort of, are they just pitching this stuff because they've been paid? That's not much different from any kind of paid spokesperson over many, many, many decades. Going after smaller influencers is interesting because I think they're judged to have more credibility. May still run into the same issue. The group of influencers that I think most companies don't leverage very well is they do a very poor job of leveraging their own employees, which is always shocking to me. I mean, like, I get that there's like influencer programs out there, but I would first drain the pool on your employee base, right? Get every employee empowered and up and running with social assets, with tools that they can use, amplifying the company they work for. Employees are very motivated to talk about the company they work for. They don't need to be paid extra to do it, so it doesn't really kind of cost anything. And it has a big impact on the market because people are like, wow, the people who work there really like that company, and they really like the things that they do. That's exciting. People want to know that the people who work there are excited to work there. It makes you want to do business with them more. And so I always say start with the employees and make them, so then start with your partners, because then there's always a partner network of some kind around you, and then start looking at the sort of broader influencer market. So that's kind of my general perspective on that. I find we're doing such a poor job on the employee stuff that no one should be worrying about other stuff until they get that solved. So, great question. Anything else?
What's your like biggest piece of advice for a young marketing student like soon entering the job market? Because I'm a marketing student.
Just like a theoretical, like you're asking for a friend.
Personal advice.
Okay, great. Well, it's. You can sit down. Yeah. I do know that question. The influencer question, I wanted context because there was something behind it, and it was very helpful having that context. I do get a question similar to your question, but slightly different often, which is, hey, I kind of like strategy, or I kind of like creative. I don't really like the technical aspects of marketing very much. Like, is that a big deal, or how worried should I be about the technical aspects of it? And if you look at my background, I started in a non-technical. I was a brand manager. Tide and Downy and Mr. Clean and stuff like that. And then I became very technical over the years as I sort of went increasingly into technology. And my observation is that you need to be both. So the first piece of advice I'd give you is make sure you're technically very adept, as well as very creatively and strategically very adept. And if you say to yourself, I really don't like the technical stuff, you should probably get out of marketing. Because it's becoming a very technical discipline, as well as, and you're going to, the marketers of the future will all be generalists who are able to think in both ways, to kind of be bimodal that way. In terms of like my best advice for someone who's a young marketing student just kind of entering the workforce, get a job at the very biggest company you can possibly get a job at. I think the biggest mistake people make is they go into startups, and they never learn the basics, they never learn the fundamentals, and they never learn what scaling looks like. And this is the biggest problem in startups, because every startup is essentially in the task of learning how to scale. But when you start there in your career, you're in a non-scaled environment, so you don't really know what a scaled environment looks like. So I would the best thing that happened to me was going to Procter & Gamble. I mean, that set me up for my whole life because I learned the basics. So try to get into the biggest company with like the baddest, like bad in a good way, baddest marketing department you can find, and get as much training as you possibly can. Even if you take less money now, you're not going to make any money for the next 10 years. Like, just don't even worry about it. Like, you're not going to make anything, okay? Live cheap, just don't think about the money. Because like right now you're laying the foundation for a career, and you got to make sure that you're smart enough to know when you see something that's not correctly scaled, that you know what it looks like when it should be scaled. So that'd be the best advice I could give. Great question. I think I have time for one more.
How do you balance personalization and data privacy?
Personal relationships and privacy.
Personalization and privacy. Like
right.
The Xbox example.
Right. How do you balance personalization and privacy? That's a great question. And obviously privacy, I don't know if anyone's following the current Facebook conference going on, but it's going to be Facebook private. They're moving to highly, less permanence with posts and stuff like that. It's a really big revolution going on. For me, I think it's pretty simple, which if somebody makes something public, a public post like a tweet, it's kind of fair game for engagement because they kind of want to be engaged. That's why they're doing it. So I think Twitter has a sort of a unique quality as a platform that as some of the platforms go more private, I think Twitter's public face allows really interesting interaction. The second thing is that when you develop a messaging relationship with somebody, which typically will start with a care scenario but can move into a marketing scenario, then they've given you permission, and as long as you don't abuse that, then you've got a really wonderful way of talking to them as well. And they expect you to know them because they know you. When you start to abuse it, they're just going to turn you off. So there's high incentives for marketers not to abuse those channels. I think what we have done with cookies and programmatic advertising has been very damaging to marketing. It's created this sense that people feel that they're being creeped on, even though they're not, because they've forgotten that they've been visiting the things. And that has actually been very damaging. It's created more angst in the marketplace than is necessary, and I think that will go away. And increasingly, as people move to mobile devices, you're not seeing that work as much. So I think it's like really about, when you want to have a conversation with someone and they want to have a conversation with you, have a conversation, just sort of normal rules. And if you reach out to someone and ask them through, say, LinkedIn, ask them if you want to have a relationship and they don't respond or they don't want to, then no problem. But it's amazing how often if you reach out in a personal way, if you reach out in a way that's connected to the things that they care about, how often they actually do want to have a relationship. It's all this generic, bland messaging that people don't want to have anything to do with. But if you're actually going to talk to me about things I care about personally, I'm generally going to be pretty open to it. So I think it's respect the law, make sure people have full control, and then, have fun and be human. And it's people like people. Humans like to connect with each other, and that's what you want to try to do. That was a great question. Thanks. All right, we're right on time, so thank you very much. Have a great day.